Hello and welcome to CX Today. My name is Charlie, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Jonathan Barouch, founder and CEO at Local Measure. Jonathan, thanks very much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Hi, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, it's great. It's great that you're here today and joining us. And I'm very excited to be talking about how contact centers can leverage generative AI to not only cut costs, but to also improve customer service. But I think it's a really great place to start today's conversation. I think the best place to start is by asking you kind of when a customer approaches you saying, I want to implement Gen AI, what's kind of the first bit of advice that you typically will give to them?
Well, firstly, in this session, I'm going to try and use the words Gen AI as much as humanly possible to kind of mimic all of the other kind of keynotes and content that I'm seeing. So I'm sorry to be another person talking about Gen AI, but the reality is we have lots of customers coming to us saying, I'm seeing it everywhere. I'm so confused. Our CEO or our board has said we have to implement this. The contact center is the place that most frequently gets quoted. What do we do? And everyone's read sort of the Air Canada case about things going wrong or giving customers the wrong information, and they literally have no idea where to start. We have some that are saying, should we do a chat bot that goes directly to the customer? Should we do internal tools? Should we do agent support? And what's going to be the quickest? Because it feels like they want to get something live to tick the box, to go back to the board to say we've got Gen AI and kind of move on to their business as usual. So that's kind of what we're seeing around the world.
Mm. Yeah, and I think, yeah, as you said, there's the Air Canada case, there's the New York City case as well. A lot of these are with virtual agents that we're seeing, but there's also lots of positive use cases as well. So it's quite a jungle out there in terms of the generative AI kind of information. But let's kind of get into some of the dangers that we are seeing first, and kind of what are the dangers that contact centers can face by purely looking at generative AI from a kind of cost efficiency lens.
Well, look, I think so from our perspective, everything we're doing and all of the current Gen AI use cases are with human in the loop.
Mm,
So we kind of feel like phase one of the evolution of generative AI in the contact center is to maximize productivity of agents, to create automation that didn't exist before, and to support the agents to become, 2x or 3x or 5x agents. So that's sort of the mission I feel for the current phase is kind of bots and AI supporting the humans. Phase two, I think, flips to the humans supporting the bots, where you kind of open up the bots to the end customer and you've got human supervision, kind of all of those bots. Now, my gut feeling is that's going to be in the next 6 to 24 months because the pace of change that we're seeing in technology, including kind of some of the GPT 4.0 releases a few weeks ago, feels like we're on track to delivering that phase two pretty soon. And then sort of phase three and the final phase is you have bots supervising other bots. And we've already seen use cases where you've got one LLM supervising the kind of inference of a second LLM to kind of make sure that you don't have these kind of Air Canada fringe use cases that kind of create a bunch of PR and kind of risk. So I think we're still in the early days, but we have a number of customers live globally in that first phase with some really compelling generative AI use cases.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've discussed before about some of the use cases that are out there in terms of kind of intent mapping to kind of summarizations. Those are some of the first use cases that we're seeing. But one that Local Measure has brought out, which I think is very interesting, is this kind of Gen AI powered real time translation tool. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Local Measure is super excited to kind of announce the general availability of a real-time translation capability. And this is kind of a typical example of how we build product. We have had customers for a number of years saying they find it really hard to staff agents in all languages, particularly where they serve different customer communities who have different language needs. Because you not only have to think about the peaks and troughs, you then have to think about adequately staffing based on language. Typically, those agents are getting anywhere from 20 to 60,000 US loading for the language, particularly for harder to find languages. So we had a number of customers saying, hey, can you please help? So what we've built is real-time two-way translation with humans in the loop. So taking a French customer in Paris, hitting a Manila agent who only speaks English and having a two-way text-based kind of interaction. So for today, we handle that over email, over WhatsApp, Facebook, Line, Instagram, WeChat, all of the digital messaging channels, in-app messaging, and web chat. So across the full gamut of kind of digital messaging. And I think it's not going to be too far into the future where you can run that in real time on voice as well. But today, out of the box, we can support that on all the digital messaging channels. So if you think about the use cases, expanding your reach into new markets, centralizing your support capability, perhaps with a BPO or in one central region, opening up support to kind of other customers that you ordinarily wouldn't be able to reach, or disadvantaged communities, suddenly all of that becomes possible. And 6-9 months ago, the technology didn't even necessarily exist to kind of make that a reality. So we're really excited to kind of put this out to market. And we've already got our first customers sort of piloting this technology.
Yeah, and I think as you suggested, there's some big benefits through that. Not only kind of through perhaps kind of doing things like prolonging opening hours and using kind of maybe following a follow the sun contact center model or something like that, but also in terms of resource planning. That's potentially a huge benefit to your customers. And I did actually mention earlier some of the other use cases that some contact centers have started to deploy of generative AI. Which are the other kind of use cases that you at local measure are really kind of seeing contact centers already bring to life?
Yeah, so we've built a bunch of out-of-the-box generative AI capabilities for contact centers. We're using Amazon Bedrock with the Anthropic models, so the latest Claude 3 models. And the really interesting part of the way that AWS has structured their generative AI capabilities is those models live within the customer's AWS account. So they control what data they want to train the model against, if any. That model is solely for their use within their account. So you're not bleeding private information into kind of a mega model. You can kind of secure the boundaries, you can secure the guardrails, and you can really kind of then understand how the model behaves because it's exclusively within your account and deployed within the region. So for governments or for companies that can't have their data leave a certain jurisdiction, that idea of having the model within your environment is really compelling. So having deployed that into a customer's account means we can then obviously do things like summarization in real time, warm handover notes because we've got access to the full transcript, whether that's voice or digital messaging, filling out forms, executing the next best action. We have a healthcare use case where typically medical workers have to spend up to 30 minutes writing kind of long forms around, the risk. Is there kind of potential risk or harm for family members, diagnosis, any medical follow-up notes? We think we'll be able to get that 30 minutes down to about 30 seconds. So if you think about tying up a medical practitioner for half an hour and giving them back 28 minutes in the day after a call, that's actually not only game changing, that's potentially life saving because you're putting them back to help other patients. So some of the use cases are really exciting. Drafting of emails, drafting of text, summarizing policies, obviously all the spelling and grammar, real-time translation. So we have a number of these capabilities powered by Anthropic and by Claude 3 and available now for customers who are using our platform, which is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. They're low-hanging fruit use cases also, as you kind of mentioned, which help to build confidence in generative AI. I mean, like even the warm handover use case that you suggested, that's by building that into kind of an omni-channel flow so that an agent doesn't have to brief another agent or a customer doesn't have to repeat themselves to another agent or something like that. Just the time savings alone on that are huge, as well as kind of the benefits to the customer service. So yeah, lots of really great stuff there, and I'm sure we could discuss kind of each of those in lots
For
more
a long
detail.
time. I mean, I think that the warm handover is, I mean, you're right, it's particularly interesting, particularly when customers switch channels.
Yeah.
So if they start in store and then they go to digital messaging and then they escalate to voice, you tend to explain yourself at each of those touch points, which is infuriating. I mean, you've probably had that experience.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can kind of summarize that interaction or summarize the notes very quickly, so the agent doesn't have a huge cognitive load to read all of the transcripts, They know the key points, next actions, what they have to do. It's a much smoother experience for the customer to kind of to bounce from one channel to the next. So in our mind, omni-channel is more than just offering an SMS channel or just offering an email channel. Omni-channel is thinking about how you orchestrate all of those channels together to make it truly seamless for the end customer. And not many CCaaS platforms that I've seen are able to actually truly pull that off.
Yeah, yeah, because as you kind of alluded to, it's the kind of carrying context across, which is obviously the cornerstone of an omnichannel contact center, to take context from one SMS conversation, for example, and pull it across to voice and pull it across to email. So yeah, it's great to see just how a use case like that can help to kind of bring a true omnichannel contact center to customers. And for anybody that does want to learn more about kind of local measures omnichannel CCaaS solution, I'll put a link. Link in the description box below. But I think that's a really great place to end today's chat. It was a great conversation as ever, Jonathan. So thanks very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Charlie.
Also, thanks to everybody for watching. Bye for now.